John Scott here with our NFL and Bills insider, Vic Carucci, as the Bills getting set to face the Dolphins. A 1 o'clock start at home, Vic. Thank goodness for us for that, and I'm sure everyone else really going to enjoy the weather. It's supposed to be great as well. Let's start here, Vic. The Bills have dominated the Dolphins. How have they been able to do it for such a consistent time here since Josh Allen's been their quarterback?
I'm a big believer in the matchup part of football, meaning there are just some teams that match up far better against other teams, and this is the one for the Buffalo Bills. I think it starts at the lines, both offense and defense, where the Bills have consistently, even with some different pieces on those lines through the years, have always been able to gain an edge. And I think the other thing is defensively, against in more recent years, a Miami team that's relied on so much speed, on the ability to beat teams with the deep passing game. Buffalo's secondary and the coverage and the Sean McDermott scheme denies those kinds of plays, forces a lot of things to happen underneath, and that is really an uncomfortable way for especially the Mike McDaniels coached Dolphins to function.
12 of the last 13 the Bills have taken over Miami. The only loss, that one in that ridiculous Heat game where the Bills still on the doorstep of grabbing victory in that one as well. The big story is Tua Tagovailoa, who left the game the first time these two teams met with his latest concussion. So much of his story playing out there. Ultimately, he has come back. Vic, what is this offense with Tua back after just one game in the saddle again?
I agree, generally speaking, with the pundits who say that the Dolphins offense gets a spark with Tua Tagovailoa back. That's fine. It did show up against Arizona, a game they lost last week at Miami. But this is where it stops against the Bills. Let's keep in mind, before he suffered that concussion against the Bills that put him out for 5 weeks, counting the bye, he wasn't playing all that well, and the Bills defense was having its way with him and the Dolphin offense in really a lopsided victory. And I think it is back to this idea that Buffalo's scheming and, of course, execution has made it very difficult for him to find those targets that he wants deep. I think he gets frustrated. I think they know how to apply pressure to him. Containment combined with just moving him to an uncomfortable space in the pocket. And it seems to be, when you watch him against other teams, he is generally more comfortable in the pocket than he is against the Bills.
I would hope Miami's offense looks better with Tua, because they were god-awful, Vic, if we're being completely honest, without him as their quarterback. And as you said, yes, it was better, but it's not like they were back to the we're scoring 70 points a game type offense we saw a year ago when Mike McDaniel and company really took off here. Terrell Bernard back for the Bills, and we've seen him in the lineup. We've seen him out of the lineup. How critical and a nice addition back into the lineup, and critical is that for this Bills defense?
I would call it important. I'm going to stop short of critical, because I do think the Bills' depth at linebacker has come through to a large degree. Not saying that Balen Spector has been a great replacement, but he's certainly got the job done when needed. And, of course, when you have Bernard in that lineup, I think it's a combination of his physical play, how he can make plays, but it's also the way he leads and directs others around him. He's such a smart, instinctive guy, and he is so in tune with what Bobby Babich is calling defensively, signal-wise. So I think that part of it is really important, but I will have to say that, as you mentioned, in and out of the lineup, when he's been out of the lineup, it's hard to point to the fact that the Bills' defense has lost a major step or two or three.
A consistent guy in the lineup for years at this point has been Christian Benford. He is listed as questionable for this one with a wrist injury. We know about Tyreek Hill. We know about Jalen Waddle on the other side. Honestly, I got to be honest, Vic. I think Christian Benford, maybe not with just the Bills, but beyond, one of the most underrated, very, very good cornerbacks in all of football. How big of a loss could that potentially be should he not be able to suit up?
There's no question Christian Benford is a critical piece to this Buffalo defense. And if he's not out there when you've got the speedsters that the Dolphins have in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and when the running backs get the ball in their hands as receivers, having that ability to not only cover but also tackle. Benford is a good wrap it up and bring these guys down. He's a physical type of player. So they would miss him if he's not there. And then I think it's a combination of having others step up to do the job. We'll see how that plays out when we see the actives on Sunday. But it's also the strategy, the coverage strategy. I still think the most important thing for the Bills to do when they are facing those speedy receivers is to make sure that nothing's getting over the top. Just keep that back end protected. Let them have the stuff underneath. Do the bend but don't break thing. And then when you get to the red zone, don't break.
The theme, and we've touched on it already, but since Sean McDermott took over as head coach and had his stamp on this defense, has been it's not like losing their starters doesn't matter, but they have had an incredible way of masking that and allowing to plug and play backups and not really miss too much of a beat. Benford is great. He has been such a steady hand and a fantastic surprise for them since they drafted him a few years ago. But do you think, especially the matchup here, a Kaiir Elam or should Jamarcus Ingram have to slide in there at that extra corner spot? It could be really detrimental, or would it just be they kind of figure out and find a way to keep the train moving as they have with other injuries?
I'm inclined to think they can figure it out, but I will not sit here and tell you that there wouldn't be a drop-off to whether it's Kaiir Elam or Ingram. I think those players, while capable of being solid, I don't know that physically they can equate to what Christian Benford does consistently well. And then I think it's a matter of, and probably mostly a matter of how this game is coached and schemed. And listen, it's important to note that why do a lot of backup players step up and perform pretty well for this team? John, it's coaching. I think one of the underrated parts of what Sean McDermott has done since he's been the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, not only in helping Brandon Beane, the personnel department, identify players who can play the position, and it doesn't matter. They don't have to, when I say the back end position of the defense especially, and it doesn't matter whether they're drafted early or not, still, though, the Kaiir Elam question mark is there as a first-round pick. But I'm talking in general, free agents, people they pick up. They can identify them, but more importantly, find the guys who can know how to benefit from the coaching they get between the games.
Isn't it amazing? We've had, a 5, 6, 7-minute conversation and not mentioned Josh Allen to this point, a guy who seemingly half the time he faces the Dolphins, he's winning AFC Offensive Player of the Week. What is it maybe about, you speak matchups at the beginning, the matchups against Miami's defense that has allowed Allen to just be superstar Allen so many times?
Yeah, look, Josh Allen already making a strong case for league MVP. He's not alone on the list, and odds makers love to put those lists out, I think, every week, of course. But this is the game, I think, where he will enhance and make that case even stronger. His record against the Dolphins, I mean, the yards, the stats, the crazy numbers he piles up, I think there's every reason to believe he will do more of that in this game. The Dolphins have some key injury questions on that side of the ball, Javon Holland being maybe at the top of that list. And schematically, I mean, look, how many changes, how inconsistent have things been for this Dolphin defense? You had, Vic Fangio running it last year, and now he's gone. And it just feels like the Dolphins are, I don't know if the word's dysfunctional, but certainly discombobulated more times than not defensively. That's not the only reason Josh can succeed against them. Josh is playing great football, and I think he continues to do that. And once again, I think there is something about this matchup that brings out the very best in him as well.
I think if I would have said a few weeks ago, Amari Cooper questionable, Curtis Samuel questionable, people would be concerned. But the ascension of Keon Coleman in particular and the continued steady rise of Khalil Shakir have really elevated this passing attack as a whole to make you feel like whether Cooper can go, whether Samuel can go, I know those are two different levels of players in this offense, people feel probably more comfortable now. And what about you, about if this offense and the train can keep rolling ahead with Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir as the focal points?
Well, I'll own the fact that I did not expect Keon Coleman to have this sort of impact this soon. I just thought it would be more time needed to mature and find his way as a rookie player. But he is showing that the traction is there. He's getting it. The lights are coming on, as coaches like to say about players when they reach a certain point of awareness. Still has growing room to do. No question about that in terms of his understanding and comprehension of the game, route running, being on the same page with Josh Allen. But he has definitely made leaps and bounds improvement from what he was showing very early on. And Khalil Shakir, just the solid professional he is, that is something the Bills can rely on. And if there is one steady aspect of this passing game, it is him. And it is the confidence Josh Allen has in him situationally to just either move the sticks or, again, make those critical plays. Now, I don't know that saying Amari Cooper not being in there won't make a difference. I happen to believe his presence, even if he is not targeted a whole bunch, and so far it's been limited. It was 5 in his first game, and of course very minimal impact last week. But I would say if he's not out there, yes, something is taken away because now the defense has one less guy to worry about. And then I don't know that the same applies elsewhere in terms of this offense. But I would say the absence of Amari Cooper to me is probably a bigger deal than we might want to think it is, just given the fact that, yes, Coleman went off last week when Cooper wasn't, making a lot of yards, but he was there. He was on the field, and defenses have to pay attention to him.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how Cooper's addition to the wide receiver group has maybe slotted everyone else to a more appropriate place in the pecking order, and so I completely agree with you. We will see what the Cooper addition or subtraction looks like and whether or not he'll be able to go on Sunday. Lastly, James Cook was the star of this offense the last time and first time these guys met earlier in the season. I know you want to give some love also to this Bills offensive line. How critical is it, do you think, that they continue to rely on the run to maybe set things up with the passing game?
So important that this running game is rolling, and whether it's James Cook or Ray Davis, they've got, I think, something going here that is going to continue to improve and become even more important as we get into the latter part of the season. The weather becomes a bigger factor, and then, of course, the postseason. But the closing out of games, you want to have that running game to do it, and they have the ability, I think, with Cook, Davis, but, as you mentioned, that offensive line to do it as well. The continuity of this line is something to pay attention to. And I know when I say this, of course, a lot of the Bills and maybe a lot of their fans are going to be knocking on wood. But the health factor, that this line has been so not only healthy, but cohesive and finding its way. And there's such a solid group. I had little concern about their pass protection ability, and they've shown that. And most of these guys, I think, were selected and put together on this team primarily for that, because this is generally known as a pass-first offense. But look at the run blocking that's done, the zone blocking that's been happening, the movement, the motion, all the things, the pulling, all of those things that create those seams. And then James Cook especially, his patience in finding those holes. That's so impressive.
Vic and I will give our thoughts after the Bills and Dolphins on Sunday, and you will catch them right back here. Until then, a 1 o'clock game at Highmark Stadium, Bills and Dolphins. Bills, honestly, Vic, they could put the final nail in their coffin, at least in terms of the division, with a win on Sunday. With Vic Carucci, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.